how do you describe Web3 to people that have no idea what it is?
Well, I do, I do like that whole read, write, own idea of it. But I think what really defines it because I speak to a lot of groups that are just getting into it, just understanding. They still need to understand what an NFT, a blockchain is, a smart contract, the most basic terms. So when I talk to them about what Web3 means, I usually relate it to them in a, I try to tell them like this. There are these things, cookies, that track your movements online in the Web2 world. And cookies have been really useful. They feed you ads that appear to be aligned with what you want. They're always trying to predict what it is that they can help you with. Some websites change completely based on these cookies. But what a cookie is still something that the company is producing and owning, and you're owning your data. Whereas the online identities we're able to form with Web3 are our own identities that we project outward. And those identities, whatever information you decide to share and what information you decide to put out there, it's actually controlled by you. So in the future, as we develop all these pieces of Web3 and get closer and closer, you'll be able to decide whether any website gets to know your name or not. You'll be able to decide if they see your age, what age you decide to tell them, and it will all be in there. And what becomes accountability with that is if you say that you're a 75-year-old woman and you've minted that in some way into your wallet and that is the identity you put forward, then if it's important, like a government related thing, then you're going to need to, it's going to be need to be a provable thing that you're a 75-year-old woman, and not just what you can do with cookies, which is spoof them and fake it and do what you want with it. So you could choose in the future not to share that information, but you could also choose to share it provably and immutably so that you know for sure this is actually a 75-year-old woman and not a guy in the Midwest somewhere trying to scam someone as a 75-year-old woman. Because we'll decide, and this is part of the ethos that we'll all have to navigate together, and this is something that we're all these are questions we're all answering right now, is what will we do to define our online identities, and how important is it to have a provable, authentic identity that's immutable? I don't have to have a piece of paper in my pocket. I can literally be looked up and my information is available anywhere in the world immutably and provably that it's actually me. And we'll have to start defining and deciding what risks that carries and what advantages that carries. So that's what I love about it is when I explain Web3, the most simple way it is, I say it's your online identity and you get to decide what you share.
I love that. And I love to build on it a little bit because on top of what people, one of the things in Limelight is this personally identifiable information or personal information that these companies have owned and been able to use at their beck and call. And Web3 is helping solve that. But then on top of that, one of the things inherent in what you're talking about is like, if you claim to be this person, however you identify yourself by age or whatever, and then you do certain things. Maybe you buy certain things. Maybe you sell certain things. Maybe you create certain things. That's now immutably minted on the blockchain,
That's right.
right? And so you are not what you've done in the past, where you went to school, what companies you've been a part of necessarily. You become, what did Jeremiah do yesterday? And what has he done for the past year?
Yeah.
Because it looks like he's been logging into his MetaMask consistently for 2 years. He must at least spend a lot of time in this space. And then what does that teach you about Jeremiah versus what Jeremiah looks like?
Yeah.
Right? Or what Facebook pages he interacts with and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I love that idea because I've preached that idea before Web3 was even a thought, is like, because a lot of people for jobs get screened out based off where they went to school, what experience they had, and not necessarily how good they would be at the job. And to those people's, just to empathize with the people who are hiring, like, I understand you got to have a system, right, of some sort. All right. But And like, I think one of the best analogies I've ever heard on this, a quick aside, my old boss, she would say, hiring somebody and interviewing them is like taking them to coffee and then getting married. you
Right.
know
Right.
Whereas, if we advance to a more, I guess, digitally advanced society where you own things and all of this is tracked on the blockchain, and how you interact with people is somehow recorded in a way that is useful, right? And you own you decide who gets to own that. All of a
Mhm.
sudden people know what you've done, as opposed to, where you've been, and stuff like that. It's just so much more valuable.
I agree, and it reminds me of when I was a television producer and I would do my yearly review. The whole purpose of those reviews is for me to try as best I can to prove that I am as close to perfect as possible, and for the person on the other side of the table to prove how imperfect I am. That was our two jobs, and why would you put each other in a position where your job as someone, I work for your company and your job is to find cracks in my armor and my job is to hide any cracks that exist? Like that is not a great system. And it's just like you were saying, when it comes to employment, I applied for a million corporate TV jobs. I wasn't super happy at certain points with the network I was working with, so I started applying for other places, right? Well, my first degree was in computer network systems technology from ITT Technical Institute, and it was an Associates of Applied Science. You can throw that degree in the garbage. And so, guess what happened when I applied for any job? A computer threw that in the garbage. And
A
it didn't
computer, not
matter
a
that
human.
I'm really good.
Yeah. Or it didn't matter who you were,
Right.
right? Didn't matter what you'd done. And maybe Web3 isn't the catch-all solution for making that a thing, but it's certainly better than what we have now.
It's
Um,
definitely a different system, and we are so early that I think that we'll get to start defining that system. And I think that's one of the reasons I think it is so important that we do so much education around this, because if we don't, some other group, a Walmart of crypto, for example, will make those decisions for all of us. And that's why it is so very important that people make those decisions and come into the space, because if they don't, corporate interest eventually will outspend us all in development or whatever. And one day, and this is something a lot of thought leaders have thought about, we'll give away our custody of our crypto, we'll give away our digital identities for convenience and security purpose because we just don't understand, and
or
that
don't want to understand.
don't want to understand.
And I think that there will be it. There's not everybody's going to want the autonomy that Web3 grants you. I think the important thing, for at least for me, to focus on, I won't speak for you. You can say whether you agree or disagree. Is that the people that do lean into it, they're going to create amazing new things. And I don't want
Right.
to, and I'm using things intentionally. Like I don't know what everything that is going to come out of Web3 is going to be, but I do know that there's a certain realignment of incentives that is only possible because of Web3. And part of that is immutably securing some sort of identity based on the actions you've taken,
Yeah.
right? And for the audience that is listening that may not be as familiar with MetaMask and all these projects we've talked about, that you can go to a website called etherscan.io, and you can look at my public wallet address. Anybody can see my public wallet address, or Jeremiah's, and you can see every single transaction that's ever happened inside that wallet. Every
Yes.
single buy, every single sell, every single transfer, all of that, every single exchange. And while it right now currently exists in mostly the transaction of cryptocurrency and NFTs as, these fungible tokens versus these non-fungible, most of it art, or maybe entrance into a different DAO or something like that. What happens when we start to apply, a chain link oracle to some sort of outside activity and mint that on the blockchain? I think those are where the really cool use cases will come out.